Out here, the threats don't arrive in uniforms anymore. They come in small boats, in the dark, crowded with people we've never met and know nothing about. Refugees, asylum seekers, economic migrants. Call them what you like, but they're all crossing the same narrow strip of sea. Today it's rubber inflatables and patrol boats. But this coastline has always lived with the fear of someone coming over that horizon. For thousands of years, people on these cliffs and marshes have been asking the same question. Who's coming next? Along this one stretch of coast, from the high ground of the South Downs to the flat open levels of Romney Marsh, you can still see the answers they built. Prehistoric hillforts on the ridges, Roman forts at Pevensey, Norman castles at Hastings, walled ports like Winchelsea, Tudor gun forts, Napoleonic Martello towers, Victorian strongholds, Second World War pillboxes. In this film, I'm following that line of defences along the East Sussex coast. From earth banks to concrete bunkers, from beacons and bell towers to radar and patrol boats. One coastline, many enemies, and a defence story that keeps changing, right up to the present day. Up here on Mount Caburn, the story starts long before Rome. Around 400 years before Christ, people enclosed this hilltop with banks and ditches, turning it into one of the earliest defended sites on this stretch of coast. From here, you look down over the River Ouse and across to the South Downs Ridge. Anyone moving along the valleys, anyone coming in from the direction of the sea, would have been visible from this high ground. For a long time, archaeologists saw Caburn as a straightforward hill fort, a military strong point. Recent excavations suggest something more complicated, a place of gathering and ritual, with pits full of carefully placed objects and bones, as well as weapons. But whatever was happening inside the enclosure, the choice of site still tells you something important. People were already climbing to the edges and high points, marking out the skyline and watching the routes below. You see the same pattern further along the downs at places like Ditchling Beacon, another Iron Age earthwork sitting on the ridge. Before Rome, before castles or guns, this is how people here tried to feel safe. Climb a hill, cut a ditch, build a bank and keep an eye on the horizon. Standing at Pevensey, you're a long way from those Iron Age hilltops. By the late 3rd century AD, this is Roman Empire territory, and the threat has changed. Around AD 290, the Romans build a new fort here and call it Anderitum. It's one of a chain of Saxon Shore forts strung along the southeast coast to deal with Saxon and Jutish raiders coming in by sea. At that time, Pevensey is almost an island, surrounded by water and marsh. The massive walls you see today are late Roman, thick, curved, and studded with towers. They're built to take artillery, to stand up to hit-and-run attacks from pirate-style warbands, landing on the beaches and mudflats. This isn't yet the story of great invasion fleets. It's about scattered raids, stolen cargoes, burnt farmsteads, and the need to protect supply routes and coastal settlements at the edge of a weakening empire. Here, for the first time on this coast, defence becomes an organised state project. Not just a local hilltop enclosure, but a permanent stone fort with a garrison, warehouses, and a clear job. Control this harbour, watch this shoreline, and push the raiders back into the sea. After Rome, new powers arrive along this coast. Saxons, then Vikings, and the old Roman fort at Pevensey slowly fades. But in 1066, it becomes a stepping stone. William's army lands there, uses the ruins as a temporary base, and then moves on. The real statement of control is built here at Hastings. On this headland above the harbour, the Normans throw up a new castle to lock down the shoreline, watch the sea routes, and dominate the town below. Pevensey is where the invasion first touches English soil. Hastings Castle is where that invasion beds in, a fortress on the cliff edge, securing the coast while the Normans take the country behind it. By the late 1200s, the danger on this coast isn't a single invading army, it's ships. Old Winchelsea, down on the shore, is smashed by storms in 1287, and the town is rebuilt on this higher ground as New Winchelsea, a planned port laid out on a grid and tied into the Cinque Port system. To protect that trade, the new town gets stone walls and gates. Newgate, Pipewell Gate and others, paid for in part by special murage taxes raised specifically to fund fortifications. Through the 1300s, French and Spanish raiding fleets keep testing those defences, landing, burning, looting and sailing away again. Not just here, but at other Sussex ports along this coast. Standing by the gates today, looking out towards Rye harbour and the Camber, it's hard to picture the ships and the smoke. But this is the moment when defence shifts from one castle on a headland to whole-walled towns trying to shield their people and their trade, even as storms and silting slowly start to move the shoreline away. As the French raids ease off, the danger doesn't disappear, it just changes shape. By the early 1500s, the big threat on this coast is no longer raiding parties, but full-scale invasion from France and Spain, especially after Henry VIII breaks with Rome. Between 1539 and 1544, the Crown reacts by throwing up a new kind of fort between Rye and Winchelsea, Camber Castle. It's part of a chain of device forts along the south coast, built for heavy guns, not swords, to command the Camber anchorage and protect the approaches to Rye. Camber is packed with artillery and archers, designed to sweep the harbour with fire. But the sea here is always on the move. As the channel silts up and the shoreline shifts, the water slowly retreats, leaving this cutting-edge gun fort marooned in sheep fields and flat marsh. You build a state-of-the-art fortress for the sea, and within a few decades the sea simply walks away. After gun forts like Camber, the Tudor state adds another layer of defence. Warning, not walls. By the late 1500s, chains of beacons run along the South Downs and other high points, ready to pass a signal inland the moment enemy sails are sighted in the channel. A single fire on a headland becomes a line of flames stretching across counties, carrying the message in minutes instead of days. Ditchling Beacon is one of those points on the ridge. Today, it's a peaceful viewpoint over Sussex, but in 1588, it stood in the front line of that network, ready to be lit if the Spanish Armada came close enough. It's the same hilltop logic as the old Iron Age forts. Climb as high as you can, watch the sea, control the routes below, but now the ditches and ramparts have been replaced by simple but effective fire signals, linking the coastal watchers to the armies forming inland. By the early 1800s, the old fear is back in a new form. Napoleon Bonaparte and the prospect of a full-scale French invasion. This time, the answer isn't a single castle or a hilltop beacon, but a continuous chain of fortifications. Between Rye and Seaford, 47 Martello towers are built along the shore. Squat, round gun towers designed to sweep the beaches with fire and make any landing as costly as possible. Many have gone, but you can still see them at places like Rye, Norman's Bay, Eastbourne and Seaford, all facing seaward. At Eastbourne, the line is anchored by a much larger work. The circular Redoubt fortress, built around 1804 to 1805, to house a garrison, ammunition and extra guns in support of the towers. This is defence on an industrial scale. Standardized blocks of brick and concrete, mass-produced along the coastline, all built around one simple idea. If the French come, hit them hard the moment they touch the beach. By the mid-Victorian period, the fear on this coast is shifting again. Ironclad warships and new artillery make older forts look fragile, and a major defence review in 1859 leads to a fresh round of coastal building. Newhaven Fort goes up in the 1860s and 70s as one of the so-called Palmerston forts, a huge complex dug into the cliff to protect the harbour and the channel approaches. It's the largest single defence work ever built in Sussex, and it stays in use right through into both World Wars. Then, between the First World War and the 1930s, the threat moves into the air. Along the coast at places like Denga and Romney Marsh, Britain experiments with massive concrete sound mirrors. Acoustic dishes designed to pick up the noise of aircraft engines crossing the channel and give a few minutes warning before they arrive. They're made obsolete almost overnight by radar, but they sit in the same tradition as the old beacons on the downs. New technology, same basic idea. Listen to the horizon and try to see danger coming before it hits. After Dunkirk in 1940, this coastline is put on a war footing one last time. Across the south and east of England, the beaches, fields and cliff tops are lined with hardened defences. Pillboxes, anti-tank blocks, coast batteries and minefields. All laid out for a German invasion that never quite comes. At Pett Level and Toot Rock, you can still see the remains of an emergency coast defence battery watching over the low, flat approach across Romney Marsh. Similar gun positions and pillboxes appear at Bexhill, Cuckmere, Newhaven, and all along this strip of coast, covering likely landing places and exit routes with overlapping fire. These are the most recent classic invasion defences. Concrete boxes, gun houses and barbed wire, facing the sea, just like the old Roman walls and Martello towers. Same problem, new weapons. And the last time anyone seriously expected enemy troops to come ashore on these beaches. Today, there are no castles going up on these cliffs, but the channel is still a front line. Since 2018, it's small boats and inflatables making the crossing, refugees, asylum seekers, and people smuggling alike, turning this narrow strip of water into a permanent political battlefield. The state's defences now are less about walls and gun towers, and more about patrol boats, radar, cameras and laws. But the pattern is familiar. For thousands of years, outsiders have come this way, and the people on this shore have watched the horizon, wondering who is about to arrive and what they'll bring with them. From these hilltops, the story looks simple. For thousands of years, people along this coast have done the same thing. Looked out at the channel and wondered who might come over the horizon. The earthworks, castles, town walls, forts, towers, pillboxes and patrols are all just different answers to the same problem. The enemies change, the technology changes, but the strip of water stays the same. This is the East Sussex coast, a place built on defence, still living with the sea in front of it and the possibility of arrival.